There is a computer in our kitchen that is on a constant loop, showing all of our photos.
It makes me wonder if the past was better than my life right now. My childhood wasn't really what you'd call normal. I grew up in 4 countries: Azerbaijan, China, Saudi Arabia, and now Canada, and I've traveled to 25 different countries so far. So this loop of photos that continuously plays on our computer is mainly travel photos, reminding me of the highlights. One night, my aunt and cousin came over for dinner, and we were watching as each picture came and went. My parents started to tell some of the stories behind our photos, some that I had never heard before. Like this. When you look at it, it looks like a nice family boat ride on a lake somewhere in China. What I didn't know, and what you can't see, is the reason why my mom had directed our attention to one side of the boat. It was so that we wouldn't see dead dogs floating in the reeds on the other side, just outside the frame of the photo. Or this one. It was taken at a place called Tiger Leaping Gorge, also in China. It's beautiful. But the story my parents told us that night was that when we got there, each one of us took turns with the stomach flu, so we couldn't hike the gorge. In fact, the closest we got to it was to take this picture. That night, after my aunt and cousin left, my brother and I asked my parents to tell us some more stories behind our photos. I loved hearing the stories, but they made me question my memory. Did I remember my childhood accurately? Did these pictures make me think that it was better than it actually was? Almost 3 years ago, I moved back to Canada after living out of the country for 9 years. After school each day, I would arrive home to that continuous loop of photos, reinforcing how great life used to be with all my friends overseas and how happy I was. They showed the good stuff. Those pictures didn't remind me of the jet lag flying home each summer or the cockroaches that would skitter around our apartment building. We didn't take pictures of those things. Instead, our photos show our highlights and reminded me of how awesome life used to be. However, I think they subconsciously held me back from making new friends here because I kept comparing everyone to my old friends. My first year back in Canada, no one would have known I was lonely from my posts on social media. In fact, when I look back at what I posted on Instagram during the first few months of living here, I looked like I was fitting in and enjoying life. But in reality, I missed my old life. My dad was still living overseas. We had almost no furniture, so we just slept on the floor. And like I mentioned before, starting school in a brand new country was pretty rough. But the pictures I posted on social media only showed the highlights, because that's what we do, post photos of the good stuff. Few of us post photos on social media of the struggles we face in life, like getting a bad mark on an exam, getting in a fight with your best friend, or dealing with loneliness. It's all unicorn frappuccinos, dog filters on selfies, and photo shoots with friends. Everyone else's lives on social media look way more exciting than mine actually feels. But is that really accurate? Or are their lives just as average as mine is now? I had an idea. Talking to my family and getting the stories behind our photos seemed to offer a more realistic perspective of my childhood. So, maybe talking to my friends about some of the things that were actually going on in their lives would also offer me a more realistic perspective of what was going on behind their photos. Then I would find out if their lives really are just one big string of highlights. So I decided to direct message some people and just see how they were doing. And it was helpful. My friends and I started to share some of the things that were really going on in our lives. One of my friends was nervous to start high school, and another one was missing her friends and family at her new boarding school. I wouldn't have known those things from their posts on social media, just like how they wouldn't have known I was lonely from my posts. Texting gave us a reality check, and it was good, but our conversations were short. They only lasted a few days and then faded, like most interactions on our phones do. Which leads me to think, maybe real conversation is the key to keeping our photos in perspective. Like everyday conversation in the hall about forgetting your lunch, how little sleep you got last night, or your math test next block. Or bigger things, like that your parents were fighting last night, or being freaked out to give a TEDx talk. These are the things that give a more balanced idea of what life is actually like behind the photos. And these conversations remind me that life is a little more messy, difficult, and embarrassing than our pictures ever show. A picture is worth 1,000 words, but they're just words, and rarely are they accurate. The only way to get an accurate picture of reality is to talk. I would rather get 100 accurate words than 1,000 inaccurate ones. Thank you.